Welcome to this edition of the Weekly Dialogues. This is going to be the third part of the series in which I am discussing the falsification of Indian history by the West and by the Marxists mainly, and a little bit contribution by the Islamists. We've already done two parts. This is the third part in which I am going to discuss the falsification of science, maths and material achievements of the Indian civilization. Now, this subject is very vast, so what I will do is that I will only touch the outlines, and this can be either expanded in a later talk, one by one, or you can always have the liberty to go and refer to this in other talks which have been given by various authorities. So, the first thing that we are going to discuss is about zero. Zero was not extensively used in Europe till 15th century. And in whatever little way it was only used as a placeholder. The situation was so funny that till the mid part of the second millennium, it is around up to 1200 and 1300th century, the best scientific institutions were using abacus to do their additions and subtractions. Can you imagine using an abacus for subtracting and adding and for multiplying? Just try doing 120 into 20. I think any student with even a limited sense of mathematics can immediately say 2400. But to do that on an abacus would take at least 1 hour. 1 hour to do something like 120 into 20. Why was this not possible? It was because Indian mathematics was using algorithms that were based from their knowledge of linguistics. The first evidence of use of algorithms is found in Panini's Sanskrit structures, and they were in current use in Indian mathematics for thousands of years. Zero is extensively discussed in Aryabhata, Bhaskar and Brahmagupta. It was then taken to Arab. It was borrowed by what is called the Baghdad school under Al-Khwarizmi. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad borrowed this, and it was then transported from there to Greece. But it has never been acknowledged by how it was found out. It was found out because the Arabs had acknowledged it. Because Al-Khwarizmi called his book as Kitabul Hisab al-Hind. That mathematics based on India or borrowed from India. It has never been acknowledged by the West. How it was found out was because the concept of zero was not understood by either the Arabs, and because the Arabs did not understand it, naturally the Greeks had no mean of having higher wisdom than the Arabs at that time, because Arabia was very advanced in their interactions and exchanges with India. It was only after the 10th, 11th century that Arabia and all the Persia, Iraq, all these Baghdad, they all went into dark ages under the influence of the Asharites, who enforced a very strict code of Sharia on the population and killed off all kind of knowledge. Whatever knowledge survived was in Spain for some time, but later on, after Ibn Taymiyyah came and the Spanish Islam also had to beat a retreat from there, It's been completely dark ages, no inventions, no new thinking, no science, no scientific thinking, no open mind in a sense. So all been closed mind in the Islamic world after that. Even in the Christian world, things were similar, because what happened after the advent of Christianity, all knowledge was spurned. Whatever knowledge was there had to be from the book, the divinely inspired creations. So it was limited to these 73 or 66 books that were acknowledged by the Catholics or the Orthodox Church. And you must have heard about that famous burning of the Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria was burned for the same purpose that the Library of Nalanda was burnt. Nalanda, Vikramshila, Udantpuri, Takshila, all these libraries were burnt with the same philosophy, with the same theology under which the first library burning incident occurred, the first great library burning incident occurred, in which Hypatia was killed in the Library of Alexandria. That is where the Christian world passed into dark ages of almost 1,000 years before they were rescued by Thomas Aquinas and the salvation or the salvaging of the Library of Toledo in the 12th century. Now, zero by Brahmagupta is a sum of equal positive and negatives. This was not understood by the West even till today. And if you want greater elaboration on this, then I will give you two references. Dr. C.K. Raju is a great authority on this subject. And also an Australian, Jonathan Crabtree. He is an Indophile, and he is doing great work on this concept of propagating the Indian way of mathematics. And the Indian way of mathematics actually starts from the Indian understanding of what is zero, dhan and rin. That is the wealth and the debt, dhan and rin, positive and negative. How that happens, you have to go to these two gentlemen. I can refer to their videos in my comment section. I will do that. Then another factor which is very important and which we have not been able to project to our own children. I have been advocating a history of science and mathematics, or a history of philosophy of science and mathematics, but somehow it has not got introduced. The only place that it has got introduced is, I think, one of the IITs, probably IIT Kharagpur has started a course on this. But this course needs to be started in every university. A history of science and philosophy. I am not saying history of Indian science and mathematics, but a history of science and mathematics in the world. Because the moment you start discussing a history of science and mathematics in the world, it has to start from Surya Siddhanta. And then go on to what are the Shulba Sutras, the Bodhayan Shulba Sutras and the other Shulba Sutras. There are 4 of them. Every theorem, including Pythagoras theorem, Euclidean geometry, has a previous theory in the Shulba Sutras that date back to the later Vedic period. Vedic period, as you now know, that later Vedic period is almost coterminous with the Mahabharata war. And if you're taking Mahabharata war back to 5156 BCE, then it's almost 7,000 years back. Then we have to take into account that 1500 missing years. I mentioned the 1500 missing years in Indian chronology. It may be more, it cannot be less. One very fine example, in fact, we had Shankaracharya Jayanti only the other day. And Shankaracharya Jayanti is being touted as something like 809 Common Era by the Western sources. Whereas all our traditional sources, with Praman, with proof, show it as 6th century BCE, before Common Era. So that is the power of chronology in distorting history and distorting facts. So you must remember whenever you do all this that the 1500 of Indian history are missing. Then we all know that India has dominated the world economy in the common era itself for 1600 years or 1700 years out of the 2020 years that we have had in the common era. Why? That is because the Indian metallurgy was one of the best, not one of the best, the best. I think one of the finest example is that Ashoka's pillar in that Qutub Minar complex. But even today, it doesn't rust. That kind of a rust-free technology is still not available. So the achievements of Indian metallurgy were phenomenal. Now we are trying to find out whether we had an iron era or a bronze era earlier than the rest of the world. And the kind of advances we are having in archaeology, we may be able to establish that. Then the Indian navigation. Now this is something fantastic. For this you have to watch some of the videos of Dr. C.K. Raju, where he brings out very clearly how advanced the Indian mathematics was, that it was able to calculate the circumference of the earth so close to the true value that they had no difficulty in navigating the entire world. The trade between India and Arabia was so common that even when Vasco da Gama actually rounded the earth and came to Zanzibar, it was a Keralite, a Malayali navigator who brought them across to India. And they were so fascinated that they tried to take away all this knowledge, but there's always this problem with the borrowed knowledge. The borrowed knowledge is not easily absorbed. That is why the West was struggling till the 18th century to be able to navigate properly. It is in the absence of navigational tools that Columbus ended up in the West Indies instead of traveling to India. It's only a story that, okay, he wanted to take the other route and all that. He just ended up in the wrong place because he has no means to find out the circumference of the earth. They calculated wrong and they went in the opposite direction. Then what happens is that in 1714, in the early part of the 18th century, the British Parliament had declared a prize for solving the longitudinal problem. And it was only after they were able to get a very, very correct chronometer or the clock that they were able to solve the longitude problem. Navigation on correct trigonometric values is as recent as 19th century. And Indians were doing it in before Common Era. And Arabs had learned from them, and the Indians and Arabs were happily trading among each other and had become the richest people on the earth. Then there is also the falsification of other things like Euclid. Dr. C.K. Raju contends that there is no historical person called Euclid. In fact, he has a Euclid Prize. Anybody who can prove the historicity of this person called Euclid, he is prepared to give a prize for that. That prize has been standing for the last 10 years, nobody's claimed it. Indian maths works very differently. It works on the empirical and on inductive evidence. All Western maths, including Euclid's maths, is all based on axioms and deductions. This is highly technical. What are axioms? What is deductive logic? What is deductive method of mathematics? Sufficient to say that in Principia by Bertrand Russell and his co-author, to prove 2 plus 2 equal to 4 takes 278 pages. How many? 278 pages. Now, why do you require that kind of a thing? 2 plus 2 equal to 4 can be calculated by a toddler, and it only has a practical value. You don't have to make it a part of religion. The West tried to make mathematics as the perfect science, and because God is perfect, they tried to make it a part of religion, the perfect law of God. And it is because of this metaphysical intervention that maths has become so difficult. And now everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but many people like Dr. Raju, Dr. Jonathan Crabtree, and many people who listen to them and who are in touch with them, people like me, we are advocating the Indian way of mathematics, which is simple, direct, and practical. That is how Dr. Raju also contends that the calculus which is being taught is all wrong. In fact, the calculus, the way it is being taught in India, is ridiculous. I am an engineer. I did calculus. I passed my engineering, and I did not know why we were doing calculus at all. That is the way mathematics is being taught. The simple thing like mathematics of curved subjects is not even told to the people, not even told to the student. And that creates so much of confusion that we all end up being what is called crammers. We just rectify. We just cram it up. That is why there is also, I think, a saying that when you are doing mathematics, everybody says, mathematics by practice. Keep practicing, keep practicing. Why do you need to keep practicing? If your fundamentals about mathematics are clear, then you have the potential to become a Ramanujam. There are no more Ramanujam coming. That is because mathematics is being made so difficult. The infinite series is credited to Leibniz, is originally by Madhava of Sangamagrama of the famous Kerala school. Everybody acknowledges it, but the name still doesn't change. The Fibonacci series is very much Indian. It is mentioned in Brahmagupta, but the name doesn't change. It is acknowledged. It is now known that it is from India. And what is the value of the infinite series? Because the entire calculus is based on infinite series. Dr. C.K. Raju, again, I would mention him because if you have to really learn these things, then you have to read his famous book called 11 Natures of Time. That 11 Natures of Time gives you in detail all these facts. Newton borrowed it from the Jesuits who had learnt it in India. Calculus is a direct result of the infinite series, summation. And Dr. C.K. Raju presents epistemic evidence to prove that Newton made a bad copy because he stole it. Not me, Dr. Raju. So, these things have happened through the years. We have not been given the credit. What has done is that it has not given us the self-confidence that is necessary. Once you know that all these are actually contributions from India, imagine the kind of self-confidence that the Indian student gets. All these things are credited to the Westerners. Sir J.C. Bose was not given the credit for radio. Indian scientists and mathematicians are kept excluded by the West-leaning peer review system. Not just that, when Dr. C.K. Raju corrected a mistake in Einstein's theorem or relativity, his work was plagiarized by no less than the chief of the International Mathematical Union, who found out, but even then he did not apologize. So friends, we have to all get together, understand this first, understand the issue at hand. Once we understand this, then we have the power of social media, we have the power of internet to go and challenge these established theories, these established tropes, and actually get ahead of ourselves. Thank you.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.